All right, welcome to Chapter 5. So, up to this point, we have done a number of different introductory subjects to get us started in modeling, and I worked you way up into simple models, and then a little bit more complex, and then a little bit more, and then a bit of a leap with the wood doll, and then a fairly complex challenge with the teapot, and I would consider most of those to be construction type problems, industrial modeling problems. So now I want to introduce to you organic modeling, and this involves symmetry, it involves soft selections, it involves moving organically and in soft ways large chunks of vertices. I intend to show you the fastest way to make a four-legged character, and also the face of the character being a very important part. My intent here is not to make a hyper-realistic animal, or even one with fur. I intend to make the shell of the animal, and I intend to make one that is done well enough that it's animatable, so kind of the low polygon version of something animatable. A lot of the face work that we're going to do for the animal is taken from human work. So in this portrait, self-portrait, I have done an enormous amount of work on edge flow for the muzzle and the eyes and the face in general all the way around. I'm going to explain to you all of those loops in referencing human anatomy, and I think it's going to be the same for animal anatomy, especially if we wanted to have talking animals. I've already taken the time to scan in for you a number of different images from the book An Atlas of Anatomy, Animal Anatomy for Artists. Some of you may have this one. It's actually very affordable. It's only $13. I'm sure you can even get it cheaper on Amazon. It's a very good book. It has dogs and bats and cows and a number of different animals in there. Very, very useful reference. So we're going to be borrowing from that, and I've already taken the time to align that reference and set it up here in Maya. So you can see I have top, front, and side views set up. I've already gone through taking the time to align it, and I've saved a file for you right here called cat alignment, where you can investigate for yourself to see the measurement tools that I had used to help me figure out the alignment. And it was just a little bit of time to set that up. I would say maybe an hour at the most to scan and crop in Photoshop, and then export from Photoshop, bring it in here, and then align it in here. It took me about an hour. So with no further ado, we'll get started in setting up the box modeling process in Symmetry using instances here in Maya. And that's probably another key word there. I should have said that one earlier when I started this recording. Box modeling. That's what we're doing right now. So all the way up to this point, we had done something similar to box modeling or closed mesh modeling. This one is going to be the traditional box modeling approach in Symmetry. So we'll get started. So the first part here is to set up a box so that we can model with it symmetrically. And there's two different types of symmetry, live symmetry that we can use. And we're going to take advantage of instances, and we're going to take advantage of reflection modeling at the same time. And I'll show you how we're gonna do that. So to bring in a cube to the scene and give it one division on the x-axis, subdivision width. Set that to 2 so that we have one division across on the x-axis, and just make this a little bit easier for me to see throughout the modeling, I'm going to turn on my wireframe and I'm going to give it a new material. I'm going to give it a falling material, and I'm going to give it an odd color you wouldn't normally expect. I'm going to give it something like a light blue, and I'm going to tone down the specular power so that when I'm in subdivision surfaces, that specular is and tone down the color, and drop the power down to about let's use the value of 10. And the color can be one of these dark grays. So it's just a softer look to it. Okay? And that should make it a little bit easier to see the soft undulations of the body as we're toggling between subdivision surfaces and polygons and toggling the wireframe on and off as we go. So back to faces, and let's delete the negative x side. So here I'm on the negative x side. And all of my points turned in red here because I left my reflection modeling turned on. So let me just turn that off for the moment and delete that half. Select the other half in object mode, and while you have it here selected, go to your display layer editor and hit this far right button with the blue sphere on it so that we put that on its own layer, and then double click that layer and name this layer mesh layer with LYR and give it a black wireframe. Okay, and then select it, make sure it's selected, and go to Edit, Duplicate Special, Option Box, and in here is where we're going to set up our instance. So we're going to mark instance, and we're going to flip it on the x-axis -1 right there, and everything else is default, and apply. And while that's still selected, I'll put it on its layer, and we'll name this instance layer black wireframe and set it to reference. And hit save. And you can see right here is an R icon on the layer editor. That means it's a reference. So now I can't select that half in the viewport. So this just sort of narrows it down for me, and you're going to get comfortable modeling on this half, the facing the cat, the left half of the cat. In the outliner, let's name the objects mesh. Let's take those two and group them, and that group can be called cat group. As far as the setup is concerned, that's done. It's really quite simple, and there's a couple of basic things you need to know about this as we're working. When you select this half, the editing half, you can't scale it in object mode because the other side won't go with it. You can't translate it. The other side won't go with it, and you can't rotate it. Meaning that the instance has its own independent translate, rotate, and scale. It has its own independent transform node, but they are linked by shape nodes. So if you do anything to the components, in this case, if you scale them, now it's going to happen to the other side, as you might expect. So that's how this works. You have to be in a component mode in order for that instance to mirror. Another thing we're going to use, another type of mirroring that we're going to use, is reflection. So if you hold down W and left click and hold in the viewport, you can go to your reflection menu, reflection, whatever that's called, tab I guess, and then enable it, and make sure that it is also set to the x-axis and to the world. You can also do that here by double-clicking the move tool, or any of them for that matter, and reflection settings are at the bottom. And reflection basically tries to find a point on the opposite side of the model. Now, it isn't reflection modeling that's capturing this point here on the opposite side of the model. That's the instance. What reflection does for me in this scenario is it prevents me from ripping open my model at the seam. So I can't move the points that are right on x0. I can't move them off of x0. And that's handy because I will, if it wasn't for this, I would occasionally rip the object open. Meaning, if this wasn't on, I would occasionally open this up, and then I would have to close it. And that's not a problem, it's just annoying. So I like to use reflection modeling to to make sure that that doesn't happen constantly. To get this point to go back to x0, I'm going to come up here to this little absolute transform input and enter a value of 0 and then hit enter while that component is selected. So it's very easy to close the seam between those two pieces. Now we're going to do all of our work on one half of the model, but as we get towards the end, you're going to want to know, how do I bring these two pieces together? To bring these two pieces back together, you're going to select both, and you're going to go to Mesh, Combine, and then Edit Mesh, Merge, and now the object is back together. And it's that easy. So in a lot of ways, it's actually quite nice to work this way in Maya. And if you've already, I've had students who work in ZBrush, and they'll sculpt out basic organic shapes in there because they're more comfortable with it, and then they'll import those meshes into here, and they'll set up that mesh as a live mesh, and they'll snap low poly modeling to it. I had one particular this last year who did that quite a bit. It hasn't been my workflow, at least not yet, but if you find that that's an attractive way to work, you could do that as well. But you could apply everything I'm about to show you to that workflow, so it's easy to move in and out of any program with this kind of setup. And another thing you should know is that this setup, this whole cut an object in half and instance it to the other half with a value of -1, that's pretty normal. You could do that in Max, you could do that in Softimage, you could do that probably in Lightwave, but I don't think you need to. Definitely in Max and Softimage. So it's a universal way of modeling symmetrically. And just one more thing before we start digging into modeling it, I wanted to show you these paint over wireframes that I've done. This is something that I recommend any beginner do, is to take some time to bring your image in that you've already aligned and take some time to try and visualize the flow of the skin, the flow of the body, the flow of the muscles, and to have some idea, like this for example, have some idea of where key edges are going to be, particularly in the beginning. Like, where are you going to be laying down the major edge loops that define the overall volume of this character, and then where will you begin to lay in your folding edges or your detailing edges for the flow of the character. Where are those poly loops going to be, and begin the process of identifying that. Like for this example, this cat, I took some time to paint over this. It wasn't really something that I used. I certainly didn't copy this, but it did give me some idea of what it should be around the eye and where the mouth is going to be, how far back it goes, how far back the ears are. It really did help me assess this cat, and I chose some images of hairless cats because I wanted to see exactly where the skin was, where exactly the muscle groups were. Another option are the scans that I've given you, like this one for example. Take this one into Photoshop or some other program, make a new layer, and start painting in lines of where you believe the flow is going to be, and then you should be making some much better results. I have these sitting on another screen. I've got a dual monitor set up here, so I have these tucked over to the side as I'm working, in addition to the references I have here in Maya. To get this process started, I want to define the bulk of the cat. I want to see the entire volume of the cat as quickly as I can. The torso, the legs, the neck, the head, the tail, every bit of it. Let's get started with that. So to edit, if I haven't said it already, we're going to only be able to edit the components of this object. And so I'll tag vertices in this case. And let's do that in the side view. So let's just tag all the vertices, translate all of them up to about the center here, and try and get some approximation of the whole body, and then maybe drag this one back a bit. And then also from the front view, tag those vertices and get some idea of how thick the cat's going to be. The front view actually isn't going to match very well. I tried and tried and tried and tried, but it isn't quite a straight-on drawing, so I'm just going to be referencing it. I'm not really going to keep to it. Whereas the side and the top are actually pretty darn close. They're pretty strict. Um, we'll have some variation in width here between top and front, but the length of the cat matches very, very well between side and top, so we'll be able to get good results there. I want to start this off with some insertions of edge loops and make sure that it's reset and I'm using relative distance from edge. I want this to be loose and organic. So I want to divide about here. And I want to divide about here for the underarm and right about here for the shoulder and hips. So what I'm visualizing here is that this face and this face are going to be shoulders, and this face and this face are going to be hips. So going to the front view here, perspective view, let's just dial down that material, make it a bit darker so it's not so glaring in our eyes. And in here I want to make a separation between spine and shoulder and hip. So I want to have at least one edge loop, and this one's important, here, and I want one running down the spine about here. These two, or these four, will ultimately become the neck. And when I extrude along the side, so let's do that. Extrude here and just translate. Notice that what I'll get are these points that are pulling, and also notice that if I go to wireframe, won't be able to see it here. Let's go to perspective wireframe. Notice that there are polygons that are going to be living on the inside, and this little rip right here has happened. Okay, there's a couple of reasons why that happened, so let me undo the move. You just have to, for the moment, temporarily turn off reflection so that when you move this forward, I'm just control clicking on the x-axis, when you move this forward, it doesn't drag those points with it, and then you can conveniently turn the reflection modeling back on. Also, what you need to notice and be aware of, that when you extrude on the edge, you are in fact creating polygons on the inside. So those need to be removed, deleted. And the reason for this separation, for this edge loop right here, the reason for that one, ultimately is so that I don't end up with a 6-point star with the extrusion off of for the neck and the extrusion off for the shoulders. If I had done them side by side, this point right here would have had 6 edges coming into it, and that is unacceptable. That will cause problems and in texturing and animation everywhere. Whereas a 5-point is unavoidable and acceptable and is very useful. There is a lot of good reasons for that, and I can go into them as I model. Let's do shoulders and hips. Let's extrude that and translate those. And this is going to be the overall width of the cat. So these two will become the legs. So let's go to the front view and extrude those. Where's the recent command? There we go. And those go down. Let's just go all the way down to the ground. And the paw, go back to the side view, the paw can be pulled out of that. So let's just do a very, very simple framework by moving this back, moving those points forward, and let's just tuck that in. Something to that effect. Okay, very loose, nothing exacting, Not yet. Just getting a picture of where those shoulders are. Let's bring that up. Let's bring that up further, actually. There we go. And let's bring this down. And notice I'm marking. I'm not using the drag feature or the tweak feature yet. I don't want to tweak one point at a time. I'm actually grabbing sets of points here. That can go underneath. And that can go about there, and that can go about there. Something like that. Alright. And then I can make better decisions as we go. Alright, oh yeah, and then the legs. Let's insert some edge loops. Let's do an insertion here. And let's do one here. And we can even take a moment to look at, let's do one down here for the paw. Right, so here are the bone structures, and what I'm looking for initially is an edge loop for every joint. So edge loop in here, somewhere up here, down here, by the leg, okay, here, and here, and here, and here, and of course way up here. It looks like I'm sort of close. Let's tuck that to the side and spend some time going through and translating some vertices. Nothing exacting, not yet. Basic. I'm not going to pull the paws out just yet. And notice I'm ignoring the illustration in the back. I'm going to use this one in the front here first. Something to that effect. Let's just tuck that up there. Okay, and then over here, same idea. Keep those flat on the ground. Tuck those in. Now for the paw, the actual toes, looking back at this illustration, I want to take a polygon in the front and just pull that forward. So to do that, I'll stop to faces and deselect everything else and extrude those. Where did you go? Extrude those and then translate those straight forward on the world axis, something like that. And tag those vertices. Just do a little bit of work on that. Okay, again, simple. There's really no point in being terribly complex right now. On the front view, we're still very square. So there's still lots of work to do on the front view. So I want to go through making changes in here, and that's just a matter of pulling points and looking at reference. Let's go back to the side view, since that's making some progress, and bulk out the chunks for the head. I'm not going to bulk out chunks for the face, just to get some bulkiness for the head and the neck, so we can stop dealing with those extra polygons that get created on the inside seam. And let's extrude those and translate them. And let's tag some vertices there before we go any further. Let's keep this one in the back of the head, something to that effect. Let's go back to faces and extrude those. Get those moved forward. Let's just bring those all the way to the muzzle so that we don't have to have, so then we can just start inserting edge loops. We don't have to keep dealing with those extrusions. Let's go to the top of the muzzle. Alright, top of the nose, mouth, chin, back of the ear, somewhere back here. That's acceptable. Corner of the jaw, approximately. Transition piece in here. Okay? Okay, very, 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 very basic. And we can pop back to the perspective view. And our reference is already hidden. we haven't even been looking at it. And take those 4 on the interior, confirm my selection, delete them. And now I want to go through and take some time to, oh wait, no, we want to do the tail. Let's keep the tail simple like we've done the rest of the body. I will insert an edge loop right here so that this polygon right here will become the tail. And I will switch to the side view and I will draw a CV curve. And I'll keep it really simple, like 2, 3, 4, 5 points maybe. And then go back here, select the face, shift select the curve, extrude it. Let's give it 5 divisions. Again, keeping it simple. I don't want a terribly complex piece. Here's the other half of the cat tail. And notice that the vertices are crisscrossing. That's easy to fix. What I'm going to do is take all of the vertices that are supposed to be on X0, and just after I delete these inside polygons, I'm going to take the edge and double click it, which it goes all the way around the cat on X0, and set that to absolute transform X0. And so now when I unhide the other half, we got it. So then I will go here to wireframe and vertex, take some time to separate this. So this time I'm going to use tweak mode and make sure I'm in world space for tweak mode, and then tweak vertices. So I just want to also make sure before going into tweak mode that make sure that the gizmo is that the manipulator is actually at center instead of, you see how X is the only axis active here. Make sure you click at the center so that that center one is highlighted in yellow, and then switch to tweak. And now I should be able to manipulate that point freely in world space and prevent these polygons from crisscrossing on the tail. And let's delete the history of the cat so that the connection to the curve is deleted. That's okay. And then let's pop back to side view and take a moment to tag, not in tweak mode, tag vertices there we go, something like that. And let's just keep the tail away from the legs so that it doesn't interfere with the work. Let's get that entire edge loop right there and just translate it away again, just so that it doesn't interfere. And we can always tuck it back when we're done. And back to vertex. And there we go. Okay, pretty good. Keep it simple. Keep it very, very simple. Maybe add a division right here just so that insert an edge loop right here just so that I can lift, hit Q to get out of that, just so that I can lift this up out of the way and get a bit of an arc and get it out of the way here. Okay, so let's look at this in perspective and see what we've accomplished. Alright, so there's the bulk of the cat. And you know what? In a lot of ways, you're just a hint closer to some kind of, stylized woodcut cat. So if this is something you needed where you would go in there and like paint the eyes on or paint in the claws, this could be acceptable for what it is you're trying to do. Not for me. I want to start dropping in some key edges, face loop edges and hips and shoulders, and I also want to take some time to round out the hips and shoulders long before I add in a lot of those edges. I just want to add one down the shoulder and down the hip and that would give me a good breaking point as I am pulling these around. If I don't add at least one right there, maybe even two, a lot of this work will be futile. So in other words, if I pull on that, I've just got a broad plane right here, so there isn't much change happening between the back of the shoulder and the front of the shoulder. So if I put a breaking edge right here, insert an edge loop right down there, now I have something to break on as I move those back. The shoulder can start to preserve its volume. Let's drop one on the hips as well. Let's drop two more for the torso, and let's drop one more here on the neck, and one more to help separate from face, and maybe switch back to the side view here. Perhaps one right here behind the eye, and that would be decent, and then maybe one in this area in front of the eye. That would be okay. And let's tag those vertices and get them into place. Get this up, back behind the eye, get this down below the eye, and between the ears, under the ear. Go to the side view here, and let's start separating vertices so that they're not overlapping each other. In other words, there's a point right, there are points right here. That's the spot, that's the X0 point, and you can see by that black line right there, that's the one that's living right on top of the reference. So that one can match the reference, and then these would like arc down and start to bulge out and give a little bit of rib cage, a little bit of volume. Tweak those. Pop. And I'll continue to do this until I won't add any more edge loops. I'm simply going to manipulate this level of detail to the best of my ability, to the best I can match the form before adding in any more, and then I'll come in and out as I add edges. You can see here in the top view it's quite wide, and even for the front view it's very, very wide. So I can tag large groups of points here, and you can see how I'm still living on, there's still very obvious planes that this cat lives on. I'll take some time to tuck those in. And let's get this in a bit more. Let's take a look at it from the top. So the top's even more narrow, but again, the illustrations don't match up so well, but I'm inclined to think that the top is closer to what's really happening. So let's tuck those in. I'm going to have a couple points crisscrossing over here by the tail. Let's get those. Keep those from crisscrossing. And bring in that leg more. Something more like that. Something more like that. Get these ribs out. Let's use soft selections. B, and then hold down B and open this up. Let's go back to side view and see what we've got. Looking okay. Let's, like I had separated up here, let's separate them down here. Let's turn off soft selections. Let's turn on tweak. You see, I need to really solve that tweak problem. It's just jumping around like nuts. And I know what it is. I've seen it before. I just can't remember right now what it is. Oh man, that's so simple. Yeah, I knew it. I knew it. I knew that I would find it. If I control click on the X, it makes that plane. Control clicking on the Z, control clicking on the Y. But then I was just clicking at the center, and that didn't do anything. So I control clicked at the center, and now it's the plane facing me, the camera. So simple. Can be a little frustrating when I haven't used this in a while. Now when I switch to tweak mode, it will do what I want it to do. The way I'm looking at the sculpture is the direction that those points will flow, and that's what I want. That's why I'm constantly rotating this, because I'm dragging those points according to the way I look at the sculpt. There we go. Now I won't have any of that nonsense that was happening. And clearly I need work on the head. So let's tweak those in. I'm just throwing out some guesses here on the jaw width here. Instead of guessing, let's look at some reference. Yeah, so I don't really have a jaw down reference, so I don't really know, exactly what it is down there, but I can see from these bits that the muzzle's just slightly more wide in flesh than the nose, and I can see here this shape, so I can make some educated guesses as to what exactly that shape is. I'm going to change my focal length for the camera to 55. Good reason for that, so that it's a little bit more like when I'm actually looking at something with my own eyes. You could increase that to 75 actually, and that'll help flatten the view a bit. I'm a fan of that while modeling, and then I'll swap it back to 55 when I'm ready to render. Let's just prevent this crisscrossing that's happening in here, and maybe just get those legs to have a little bit more meat. A little bit. Let's bulk them up a little, feed them some meat here, and then let's swap to the front view. Go to the wireframe and see what's there. You know, I a little while ago I changed my references so that when I drag this time slider, it'll do transparency on my references. That's simply that is simply animating the alpha gain of the reference. So at frame 1, I right click on this, set a key, go to frame 10, change the value to 0, right click on this, set a key. It's pretty easy. So I can just scrub this at like frame 2 or 3 and have a semi-transparent reference. Thought you should know. Okay, so let's compare this to, well, let's just kind of take a larger look at what I've created here. I think I could stand for some work on the neck. Perhaps this would be a good time to detail up the volume of the legs. And let's start with the hind leg. It's looking kind of scrawny back here. Let's start with that. And again, tweaking. Let's thicken them up a little bit. That tweak mode, I can't believe that tweak mode really threw me off for that many minutes. Frustrating. Even more frustrating when I'm demonstrating. Let's get the back end reasonably correct. So I feel pretty good about the front end, the breast. So let's work on the butt. Just make this a little wider. Just looks so scrawny, like a wet cat. Give him something. Go a little bit fantasy with him. Okay, that's better. It's a little bit more attractive. Not exactly a show cat, not yet. But better. Let's get these correct. Let's get the, like I said, the anus, butt correct. Or at least close to correct. Let's take a look at this reference here. So very square-like. Square, not too much. Just kind of a V shape. Very simple. Okay, let's do that. Let's get these tucked in there. Let's hide the let's hide the tail since it's in my way. Let's select the tail. Let's just extract it. When you extract something, it destroys the instance, but I can hide the tail and rebuild the instance. So let's go to duplicate special again and make sure that that object is on the reference layer so I can't select it. Okay, so tail's hidden, that's good. And let's start working on that V shape that we saw in the this reference right here, this V shape. Make sure tweak mode is on. Let's bring those closer. sometimes it is easy to select through the mesh and grab some unknown vertex far away. So if you go to grab a point and you drag your mouse like that and you think, oh, it didn't move, be sure you undo, because you might have moved something on the other side of the mesh. Just a little tip there. I'm frequently undoing those maneuvers. Trying to get to the leg here. Let's tuck these in. Tuck these in here. Where are you? There you are. There it is. Let's get that down. And this one. It's getting close. And let's just dial this in a bit. Okay, so one of the other tricks up my sleeve is the average vertices tool. So if I find an area is still particularly bumpy, let's just call it bumpy for the lack of a better word, or too square, I can marquee a chunk of it and come up here to mesh and average vertex. And what I like to do is just leave this open and dial it all the way down to like a value of 1 or 2, and then just tap apply. And you notice how it can take a selection and just sort of tuck it in. Even if I were to drag one point way out here like this and select that one point, I could average that, tucking it back into an average of its neighbors. So it's very useful in that way. So we'll leave that open while I'm working, so that as I'm making these decisions, let's instance the tail too, and add it to the instance layer. Okay. Okay, it's time to start dialing in more details, so we'll do that next. I want to spend some time on the legs. I was looking at this reference here and seeing how these muscle groups come inward and this broad plane, and it's a bit of a twist here in the leg. I'd like to try and get a little bit of that and get some thickness to the paws to be a little bit wider. Taking a look at the front view reference, I need to kind of pull this one up in order to see the one that's underneath that one. Get that one down. Also take notice, a thought just came to my mind here. Also take note that do most of the body work without even paying attention to the head, and vice versa. I can do most of the head work without paying attention to the body. Almost all of it. So I don't want to get too far on the body and ignore the head, and vice versa. I don't want to get too far on the head ignoring the body, because there are certain edge loops that will traverse the entire body and head. It just so happens that I'm able to avoid those for the moment because I had been wise enough to add this poly loop a long time ago. So my shape isn't quite what's there. So I'm just going to tuck this to the side while I'm doing that, and take this very low setup I have right now and try and get some thickness in there. Let's hide the tail. Okay, so we're going to put in a couple more divisions, and I'll start with the hips and shoulders. I'm going to insert edge loops here, and here. I'm also going to insert them here and here. So that will give me a decent amount of geometry to define those muscle groups. I'm also going to need additional edges here and here. In those locations. And there. It's quite a bit. But it is good in solving the forms that we need. So I know where my joint edges are, and now it's easy enough to go in there and just start considering the minor perturbations of the surface and muscle groups. I think for animation you're going to need at least double here on the torso, so I'll split those. And across the shoulder and hips, I'll need to split there. And it does seem like it's overkill. It does worry me sometimes to do something like this, but there are tools to help me with this. Soft selections and averaging vertices, although averaging vertices has its limits because it does destroy the volume. While we're at it, let's increase the neck divisions and across the head. To give you some idea of what these divisions have done to our mesh, let's look at it in subdivision services without the wireframe. It has, in a way, squared it up more. It's more square. So my job is going to be to help relieve that. Now I'm going to go through and get out of subdivision services. Going to go through and tweak with the soft selections. Okay, and if things are still looking too square, you could drop in a couple of average vertices here and there. You could do that on faces or polygons, or I'm sorry, faces or points. You could drop that in a couple times, although be careful with it. Use it very sparingly because it will destroy your volume that you've worked so hard at building up. Let's use that average vertices a little bit more frequently here. Let's grow my selection and then just use the lowest setting and apply once, maybe twice, just to help round out those ribs and shoulders. Don't do it on the seam or else it'll open up the body, it'll open up the seam. Let's run it there a couple times. That's better. It seems like there's just not enough detail right in here, so I'm going to insert one more right there. Let's see where that went. Right on. That's a good place to have it because I was having a lot of trouble with these getting too long and too spiky. So what I'll do now is take advantage of that situation where I can then pull these up a bit. So now I've got one more to work with. Of course, I had the same problem in the back over here too. Let's also have one more right here. That one did go into the face. That's okay. Haven't been doing much work in there. And I think maybe one more right there. Yeah, and that's good because that'll give me the detail I need to do stuff like this. Take the tension off of those polygons. So much better. I think maybe one more around here. And we'll take that as good advice for the rear leg too. Go into vertex. Spend some time rounding all of that. Could use average vertices, but I want to control the volume a bit more tight. Let's look at that in the side view. See how I'm keeping with the reference. So yeah, okay. So as I suspected, I really I thought I was ignoring something there. I have a bit of thigh I'm missing here. Some volume to the thigh, and I'm not quite arcing in enough right here. So let's push that inward. Bring this out, in. Maybe another division right here. To help me further define that, and just lower that. It really is exciting when it starts to take shape. Even more exciting when the face starts to take shape, because there's so much character in a creature, in its face, human or animal or either. Right on. It's starting to happen. It's starting to happen. Let's make a big, broad movement like that. Yeah. We can fix the tail later. We can add it again later. Right on. Let's go to wireframe for this one as well. Let's just hide it. Hide and show. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I was following this line, and that's the other leg. Huh, I was wondering. Okay. Let's push that back. Yeah. There we go. All right. Another division here to help with that. Ankle. I guess you could call it an ankle. Here. And maybe here too. Yeah. And then a more clear definition of this elbow, right? Yeah. Yeah, I've done that very poorly so far. In this skin, I've done that very poorly as well. Let's take note of that. Just a bit of elbow here. Let's work on that. So that would be, in my scenario, this edge goes under while this edge goes over. And let's go to perspective and focus on that a little bit. So this gets tucked under. And you know what? I don't even care how like broad these polygons are becoming because of this. I'll just drop another division in there. I think that's would be best. So let's just pull all of this back. This one. Right on. All right. That's that's better. That's much better. Okay, and then I think to further define that, because let's just see where this poly loop is going. You see how it arcs around the whole leg there. I think it would be smart to divide that on either side again, because I can use those on the toes. Right? Right. So let's do that. Insert here, and I can take that as good advice for the rear leg as well. And that's probably as complex as I'll get, because I can get, you know, the remainder of what I need for the toes locally. I don't need to cast any more or crisscross any more edges propagating across the body like that. I don't need to do that. Let's go back to that elbow. We're getting somewhere with that. So I think you can see that it really wasn't achievable until a certain amount of edges had been established. So in that lower polygon state, it really wasn't possible. And let's keep these from flip-flopping on top of each other so badly, so let's just give a little room, something like that. Maybe cross-reference with that anatomy that we've been glancing at once in a while, and see that there is a fair amount tucking under here, starting about right there, across the ribs, flowing in this diagonal fashion. So I could pay a little bit more attention to that. I probably should have earlier. And then the opposite direction, meaning if we take again back to this reference on the rib cage, similar to what I do with human modeling, if I've got a flow going in this diagonal direction, that means I have the opposite flow going in the opposite diagonal direction, and we do indeed. We can see those lines here. So that means that these seemingly vertical ones should actually be leaning that way. So that means taking all of these points, maintaining that direction, and just dragging them back. So they're maintaining their direction, just dragging them back. Turn off soft selections on and off as I need to. So they're leaning something more or less like that. So crisscrossing in an X fashion. And then now I'm leaning more towards the real. All right, I guess I've fallen victim to wanting to make something more realistic. I'm guilty of that all the time, but I think it's good to see these things, even in a stylized cat. You should be able to see these things. Let's not lose perspective here. I don't want to get too close. I just wanted to dial these back like that, and like that, and like that. This wouldn't be a bad time to delete the history. I've done an awful lot of work. You can see I've got a quite a tall stack of work here. And it wouldn't be a bad time to also save my work. So we should do that. Okay, so let's look at the perspective again, number 5 again. So we've been adding details, and I've been considering a number of different things, such as this new flow. And I think that I really needn't spend more time, other than because I've solved a lot of the major
problems of the body. It's just a matter of observation and moving points, really. The toes are as detailed as you want them to be, of course. But to get you started, I would recommend taking this edge. See, I want the edge. There we go. Got it. And then double clicking. There we go. And then beveling it. But bevel it open one segment so that it creates this little triangle right here. Of course, you have some n-gons here and here, but you could easily cut across right here and connect, and then continue cutting across, so that this is just a triangle sitting with some quads. And the whole point of it is that you then have the ability to split this down the middle and tuck it in. I suppose I could have done that with the bevel, 2 divisions on the bevel. I guess that's easy enough. Yeah, like that, and just remove this. Just remove, that edge right there. So that's a 4 point, and then, like I said, split across here. So that would be insert edge loop, split like that, and do the other toes too. Don't do this. So this is assuming I had done the other toes. I guess I could just illustrate that for you too. So edge to edge, and then edge to edge, and then bevel, same idea, and then delete edge here, here, delete, and then finally insert edge loop on the back side as far as it will go. It can't cut across here because those are n-gons, and then finish it with the interactive split tool, point to point to point to point to point, hit return, and now those are quads and triangles. And then that gives you the ability to split the toes by simply. And in animation, I don't think, unless you're going for hyper-realism, in animation, really all you need to do is have 3 toes, just like how cartoon characters have three hands. And now you've got a huge amount of detail, this huge amount of polygons to detail up the foot. Okay, that's the fast solution, and then slower solutions would be if you allowed that geometry to travel across. But I really don't think that's wise. The tail. I think that the tail will simply have to be remade because it's probably been moved around a little bit. So I'll just go into vertices for the whole tail and slide it around until translate it around until it's kind of matching the butt again, and then I can combine and merge the vertices, and that'll be fine. So this wraps up the body section for now. I think I'll take some time on it myself and then show you the final result. And if I see there's anything really significant that I think I need to point out, I'll record that for you. So I've spent probably another hour modeling the body before getting onto the head, and I've added several edge loops around the feet. I've added at least 3 at the bottom of the foot, across the toe. I've spent a lot of time just rotating around and taking a look at these vertices and comparing it to reference, and I just spent a lot of time on the shoulder and articulating the shoulder blade and the elbow, popping back to the top view and making sure that I'm following the flow of the musculature. I spent time trying to get a bit of a stronger looking neck, although I think I'll be coming back to that to get those flowing in the right direction. Um, in general, yeah, I split maybe several times across the legs horizontally. A few more, 3, I think, in the torso. I think I'll need an additional one here, and maybe even one here, or I'll take the one that's already there and move it over. Um, Probably should just add that right now since I'm thinking about it. Right here and right there. And every time I add an edge loop, I need to go through. This is why I like to add maybe one at a time and take it slow, because I have to go through and clear out the flat areas that it makes. So you can see when I go to subdivision surfaces, there's this sort of flatness that occurs when I drop in that one. It's not so obvious on this particular example, but it's more obvious in tighter areas like around the legs and shoulders and such. I've got a lot of bumpiness in here due to the ups and downs of my mesh, and I'm spending time in spacing them and just trying my best to clean that stuff up. I think ultimately what I'm seeing here is that some of these edge loops are like getting pulled apart, like this area is kind of broad in here, and that doesn't help me. So, as a novice, your gut reaction would be, well, let's just drop an edge loop right there. But if I do that, then that means I have to deal with it all the way down here. Instead, what I'm thinking is taking this edge loop that I've nurtured forward a bit, bring that back, and bring the one on the neck back, and then drop a few more in the neck. And then that would be a much more workable solution. And you can see I'm already in the process of kind of pushing them back on the shoulder right here. So it is just a lot of back and forth to reference, to extra references. I'm pulling a lot of extra references from the side. I haven't really bothered getting into really tight details like articulating toes, and I certainly won't do the face until I'm ready. I'll record that for you. I did attach the tail again and did a little bit of work on the tail, modifying that, kind of smoothing it in, and I'm going to continue to do so for maybe another 30 minutes or so before I get to the face. So I'm just a little disappointed in myself. I did find a pretty big problem, and it could have been avoided a long time ago. If you remember me discussing separating the neck from the shoulder to avoid 6-point stars, well, I actually discovered I have one on the inside of the leg, and this is going to be on both sides. So I've got one here, and there must be one hiding under here somewhere that I just simply at the moment can't see. I think it's that one right there. It's got to be that one right there. And so the only way to remove it now is to carefully select the entire appendage all the way up around the shoulder blade following that poly loop, and forcing this 6-point star to split into 2 5s. And to do that, I'll extrude it and then offset it. So I've already extruded it. I'm just going to change the offset and pull it in a little bit just to separate it. And that does give me yet another edge loop to deal with around the shoulder. I can deal with that. I can deal with the points, but I simply couldn't deal with the 6-point stars. And I more than likely have one sitting over here because I did exactly the same thing to the other leg. So you remember early in the process when I had the leg, and I said, okay, here's the shoulder, and I went like this, and I extruded it, and I said, here's the shoulder. I came over here, extruded it, I pulled it out, and then I said, okay, this is going to become the leg right here, and then I extruded that one, and then I pulled it down. Well, that's the problem. When you do 2 extrusions side by side like that, so there must have been another extrusion right next to it, which would be this one. Let's say I did that one, and then pulled that down and moved it over. Yeah, and now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, now I've got 6. So 2 extrusions sitting right next to each other. That's the problem, and that's what I did with the legs, both legs. I went too quick, and I wasn't paying attention, and I didn't think of it, and I feel so bad that I didn't catch it earlier, because now if you've been following me, you have to do this too. It's nice to see how to solve it. I mean, once you have a 6-point star, I guess as a novice, it would happen to you eventually, so it's good to know how to fix it. So back to that square example, fixing it on the square would be as simple as what I did with, well, it's simpler on the cube because you have less to deal with, but in that one, extrude, good, good. Okay, so it's as simple as what I'm trying to get to take that section and extrude it as an entire piece, extrude, and then move it away, offset it, just pull it in, and that forces a poly loop around the entire appendage, which then splits the 6 star into 2 5s, and 2 5s are much more useful than a single 6. So back to this leg, I'd have to do it over here too, plus identify where my 6 star is. So I need to find it, and I haven't been observant enough to spot it. It's got to be like tucked in here somewhere. It's probably, well, it's right there actually. It's that one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on that one point. So I'll do the procedure here for you. I will select all the faces of the foot and then grow my selection up to the inside of the leg, up to the 6 point. Yep, right there. And the 6, that means the 6 point is over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, there's one right there. Okay? And then the rest of it is to finish that loop, which would be to go up, around, and the rest of the leg, the rest of the hind leg. So I'm going to use paint select to get those, so that I don't accidentally grab things I don't need, because I don't want to make any other issues here. That's why it's nice to catch these things early. Doing it late in the stage like this just is a bit of a pain. Okay, and that's it. So it was a little easier to select on the hind leg than it was the foreleg. And now it should be a simple matter of extruding and offsetting just a little bit, pulling that in. And that will break those 2 stars, that one, into 2 5s. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, and way over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's a little sharp looking, but that vertex right there. Okay, so that's how you fix a 6-point star.